Rachel, Lindsay, Jean, Izzy, as well as Nicole. I got that right. I didn't mess that up. It's great. And so what we're going to do is our eBoard members are going to take turns asking them questions. And then once we're done with some general intro questions, we'll take audience questions. So feel free to throw them in the chat as the panel is happening or send them to Emma privately. And we will go ahead and ask them throughout the panel. So without further ado, we'd like all our panelists to introduce themselves. So that would primarily be your name, your hometown, your past co-op experience, your favorite ice cream flavor, and your area of interest in computer science, if you have one.
I can start. So I'm Rachel. I'm from Portland, Oregon. My major is data science. My favorite ice cream flavor is probably mint chocolate chip. And I just finished my first co-op in the fall with HubSpot.
Awesome, thank you, Rachel.
I can jump in next. I'm Izzy. I'm a fourth year computer science major. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I've done 2 co-ops so far. First one at Thermo Fisher Scientific, and the second one was at MyCase, formerly a part of Appfolio, so it's kind of like both. And my favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate chip cookie dough.
I can go. I'm Lindsay. I'm a fourth year CS and history major. I'm from Lexington, Mass, which is like 30 minutes outside of Boston. I co-op first at Power Advocate, then at Salsify, now currently just started a month ago at Datadog. Ice cream flavor, I would say mint. I like mint a lot, so like mint and cookies or like peppermint stick. Area of interest in CS, mostly backend, if I had to say, but I like full stack overall, web dev.
I can go. Hi, I'm Jean. I am a computer science major. I'm from Westborough, Massachusetts. My previous co-ops have been at Power Advocate, HubSpot, and then I did a summer internship at Facebook. My favorite ice cream flavor is peanut butter, definitely. Anything peanut butter related. Area of interest in CS, I think I just really enjoy building like beautiful interaction experiences. So that usually involves a lot of front end, but I also really enjoy full stack work.
All right, and then it's me. So hi, I'm Nicole Tanoajaya. My major is CS and business. I'm a third year, and my hometown is Sacramento, California, and I'm still at home, but I'm going to New York in just about a week, I think. And I guess that leads into my co-op, which is same place as Lindsay, Datadog, woo! And ice cream flavor. I'm pretty strong on strawberry or anything sorbet, so that's kind of a boo, but sorbet is great. And my areas of interest in CS, my favorites are, I guess, mobile dev. That's kind of like the reason why I got into CS. Oh, thanks, Emma. Yeah, sorbet is great. And I'd also say I'm pretty interested in distributed systems, kind of what my co-op is on right now, but yeah.
Cool, thank you guys so much. So I think the next question is going to be asked by Rachel.
Yes, so next up, can everyone explain their current or just most recent co-op role and their day-to-day tasks and responsibilities?
Well, my most recent position, I was on, actually it was my only co-op. I was on the domains team, which is like a back-end role. There were only 3 of us on the entire team. So it was really easy for me to like talk to my manager or the other person on the team and get specific assignments. But generally I would be working on one larger project that kind of took a couple weeks. And then I would also take like code fixes or like a bug that was pointed out by specific customers, kind of like on a case-by-case basis, and then also monitor our team Slack channel for any questions that people might have or like requests for reports.
At my most previous role, or my last role, at my case, I was a full stack software co-op, and I was on the payments team. And so we did mostly a large feature work for the entire time I was there, and then bug fixes just as needed.
Are we talking about, sorry, are we just talking about our current or most previous? Because I'll just do that. I can just.
Whichever experience comes to mind, but just specify which one you're talking about.
Gotcha. I should go probably then, I guess. But so currently day to day is pretty chaotic compared to what I'm used to, I would say. I mean, not chaotic in the sense that I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but a little less directed. I think at Datadog, I feel like they kind of will throw you in the deep end a little bit, and there's not a lot of hand holding. Also, 3 out of 4 of my team is in Paris, which is a little bit of a struggle. So like I'm only online with them for like maybe 4 hours. Nicole can sympathize. We have like a very similar experience in this way, but that's not the case for a lot of teams. A lot of teams are based all in America. So yeah, it's kind of like you go through planning and you figure out what you're supposed to work on for that time period, and you kind of just like go through it as you go. Day to day, I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. I didn't think about my answer before I asked my question, and then I realized I had to answer. So just like coding, trying to find help. It's a lot of, right now I realize this role in particular is a lot of infrastructure work, because all the teams at Datadog kind of handle their own infrastructure. So I've just been like in Kubernetes for like a week. And that can be kind of tough because it's also like a lot of spread out domain knowledge. So you will have to hit up like public channels for help sometimes. It's intimidating. Yeah, I guess that's kind of day to day. Try and get something done and then hit up various people for help. Or wait until the Paris people come back in line in the morning to ask them for help.
I can follow after that. I think it's a little bit of a special case, at least for me and Lindsay, but a lot of our work involves, or for me personally, having a lot of meetings early in my day. And since I'm in California right now, that's 3 hours back from EST. So I start work at 6, and just making sure I know what I need to do, what our team wants to accomplish, kind of working in sort of an agile way, but nothing really concrete. At least for me, my team is pretty small, so 4 people. And yeah, I think we really try to make sure that the work we do gets organized, and we ship directly to customers because our code is open source. So making sure that what we do is in line with what the customers want, and then just reiterating that constantly to make sure we have consistent performance and results. But I'd say like my day-to-day schedule is maybe 1 or 2 hours of talking with other engineers, asking for a lot of help, and then the rest of the day is grinding on what I need to do, understanding it, and yeah, just a lot of learning.
Yeah, I can follow up with like my most recent role at Facebook was so a big difference, not big as Paris, it was like 3 hours. So I would like wake up in the morning and work by myself for a couple hours while we still waited for everyone in California to wake up. And then like throughout the day, it's like a lot of meetings and consulting documentation for hours and like really reading through the weeds of it, talking to the people who wrote the documentation, maybe talking to people who actually wrote like older versions of the code that you're trying to update. Yeah, so it's a big mixture, but I always am spending hours on calls with people, and I think that's like a great way to learn.
I think I just like to come back to this, thought a little bit more about what I wanted to say, but like more generally speaking, I think because of the co-op program and like the time period, a lot of interns will have their own projects and whatever. But like if you're on a co-op, you usually will just be, your role is basically that of a regular engineer in most ways. So whatever your team is doing, that's going to be your day to day.
Yeah, I feel. I think the next question is going to be asked by Angelina.
Yeah, could you guys describe your career path kind of from your first co-op to the present or most recent co-op, and also something you wish you knew when you were searching for your first co-op, looking back?
Mine is pretty short because I only did one co-op, but I will say I did have a part-time internship before that that taught me like a lot of soft skills that I needed for my interviews going into my co-op search. I think a lot of companies emphasize that on your first co-op, and I think it's really important to be able to at least like talk about experiences that you've had that can like show those soft skills. I think for me personally, one thing that I wish that I knew before starting my co-op search was definitely to have a bit of a sense of humor about things. I've had some like pretty unsuccessful experiences in interviews where like they told me it was behavioral and I went in and it was technical and I was just like beyond unprepared and just ended up like laughing, and the interviewer just laughed at me and I was like, all right, like I know I'm not getting this co-op, but here we are. But also like you will also have good experiences. It's not all bad. But it is all like interpersonal. Like they're not a robot. It'll be okay.
For I guess my like career path so far, I was computer engineering, computer science when I was first finding my co-op, and I knew I wanted to do a software co-op. And I was quite naive at the time. I didn't even know that technical interviews existed. And so my biggest hint or like suggestion to finding your first co-op is if you have questions, seek out advisors that will be able to answer them. I think if you're in the College of Engineering, sometimes, hopefully it's better now, but the information wasn't really shared about software co-ops. And so I definitely can sympathize with you, Rachel. I had a couple bad experiences, but I think kind of teaching yourself to pick yourself up, and none of it is personal. It has no reflection on like who you are as a person or as a student. But my first co-op was at Thermo Fisher Scientific. It was a software engineering co-op with a lot of work with hardware as well. It was a great experience for a first time co-op, and I learned a lot about what I like about software, but I learned even more about what I don't like. And I think when I was finding my second search, finding the things that I really did not like about my first co-op helped me a lot. I always heard people say that before I was looking for a co-op, and once you like kind of go through a co-op or two, you really realize it's important to know what you didn't like. And so for my second co-op search, I wanted to find a purely software experience. And at the time I wanted to go to California. So that's why I ended up choosing, at the time it was Appfolio, and now Appfolio in my case are two separate companies. So they both are really great in San Diego. And I worked remotely the whole time. It was super hands-on, very challenging. They really pushed you to rise to the occasion. And so from that, I'm just gonna be looking for a third co-op as well. I think that was all the questions.
Yeah, I can go next. So I actually started out college as a full history major, and I didn't get into CS until like my freshman year. And I didn't do any CS in high school or anything. So I kind of like just joined, yeah, just kind of decided to join fundies, my freshman year, and it was fun. So I thought it was cool. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just keep trying this, see where it goes. And then I kind of just applied to my first co-op, like, well, if I don't get a software internship, maybe I'll just apply to the archives in Mass Archives. That's like a typical history co-op if you don't know. But yeah, luckily I did end up picking up a co-op at PowerAdvocate. I had heard good things about the company or the like culture and like the co-op experience from like someone I knew, some upperclassmen I knew. So I ended up applying and thankfully I got it. It was my first in-person interview. I had a couple of phone interviews before that, but I'm glad that worked out because I really thought I didn't get it when I was there in the interview. And then they're like, oh, you got it. I was like, damn, okay. So then after that, that co-op was like mad fun, super fun, highly recommend. Then after that, I didn't really go into my second co-op search with like anything really in mind. I guess maybe like money. So yeah, I just applied to Salsify because I was like, they pay you pretty well. And then I had like some other interviews and obviously like I didn't get all of my interviews or anything, but you definitely get hit up a lot more on your second time around. Like I was getting responses back to interview a lot more. And then yeah, so I went there and that was pretty chilled and that was like all back end. But some parts of like my team's culture, I think I would say I wasn't like a huge fan of. So you kind of learn like what parts you don't like and you can kind of target your questions around that when you're like interviewing also to learn about if you'll figure out if you'll like it or not. And then I just kind of applied to Datadog. Yeah, same thing. I just thought the product was cool because I was like, oh, this will be super technical and so you'll probably like learn a ton. And it's true, it is very technical. And you will learn a ton. So yeah, that's me.
I can go. I did come in as a computer science major, having taken one computer science class in high school. So I also went to PowerAdvocate for my first time co-op. And I think like looking back on it, it was like a great decision. I learned a ton. And so like the advice I would give myself, I think at the time I had like a big crisis over whether or not I should take an offer from them or another company that I was like pretty far in the pipeline with that was bigger. And I think it was like a good decision. Oftentimes like big names are really dazzling and I totally get it. Like you want to be like able to say you like clinched like some big company, but speaking later to people who did end up there, like there was a lot less hand-holding. There was like basically take it and run. And I definitely could not have handled it. I probably would have been really struggling if I went. So I'm really happy I ended up at a company that like understood how to handle like first time co-ops and understood like how to go through the learning process with them. My second co-op at HubSpot, and that was a front-end development position. I think it was really interesting just to try that out. Yeah, and then I did a Facebook internship. That one was very much, I got contacted via LinkedIn. So who knew, like, my LinkedIn really just saved me. Like I didn't realize LinkedIn was so poppin', but now I know if you have a pop in LinkedIn, sometimes you get contacted there.
Sorry, I'm experiencing lag, but I think everyone else went, so I might as well go. I also came in as a CS person. I think I was pretty set on doing something with CS, was really into mobile apps at the time I was a freshman, but I didn't really know like what software engineering really entailed. Like that was just a really big black box. So yeah, I was really clueless when I applied the first time in my sophomore spring semester, which feels really long. It wasn't that long ago, I guess, but yeah, so definitely I think now having done one co-op at Whoop, which was very full stacky, and this one, which is very, I guess, kind of like system-y, distributed systems networks. I I would say I still don't know 100% like what I want to do in software engineering. I think there's just so much to explore and I might just be too curious, but I think it's really good to at least experiment a little bit and see what you at least don't like, which I think Izzy mentioned. And I think that's like a really great piece of advice because software engineering is really big and you might even not like software engineering. I don't know, but it's definitely something you should explore on your co-op, and that's the best time to.
Cool. So I think I have the next question. My question is, what criteria do you look for in a co-op and like in a company in general?
Personally, I'm really big on culture, which is kind of hard to like suss out based on like a job description. I think that it kind of is something that you figure out during your interviews, or if you can do some kind of visit, or if like recruiters come and talk to clubs. I know that we get a lot. But I will say you definitely can when you're interviewing, especially if you can go in person, you can tell what the vibe is. I had one interview where immediately I knew I didn't want to work there. Like I was answering a question and like I was going to get to the right answer, but I wasn't doing it in exactly the way that they wanted. And they were just like, no, start over. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want this, you know? And like I went to one office, I saw like a couple hundred people and like 2 females. And I was like, maybe I don't want this. So I think like definitely culture is really, really big for me.
I would have to agree on culture. I think for my second co-op, I was really trying to pay attention to mentorship. I found in my first co-op, if I really like seeked out a question or something, people would be there to answer it, but there wasn't a set up program. And so that was the thing I was looking for the most. I was really looking for a place that wanted you to learn and wanted you to learn quickly, which I know is a lot of places. I would say in my like upcoming search, I'm looking for a smaller environment where you aren't just one like little fish in a big sea. The size of the company really does matter. And I definitely want to like reiterate what Rachel said about the culture. I think when you're talking to the people in your interviews, even if it's a technical interview, like trust your gut on whether or not you think that the company's right fit for you. It may feel like yes, you're interviewing with them, but really they're also interviewing with you. Like all these experiences are for for you to like find out what you want to do in life. And so I've definitely had a couple of interviews where on paper it went great, but just like somewhere in my gut, I was like, I don't think I want this. And it's okay to trust your gut and not go with just every option that you have.
Yeah, I would agree with Rachel and Izzy on culture. That's probably number one or close to number one. I would say that for a co-op specifically, I might be more concerned about like, maybe not more concerned, but equally concerned about like what work you would get as a co-op, because you definitely want to feel like you're contributing and also that you're getting enough work essentially to put on your resume, especially for first co-op, second co-op, depending on like what your plan is. Yeah, like building your resume. I mean, I didn't really think about it that much when I was applying for my first co-op, but I think just like making sure, because I trusted like basically the word of mouth I got about the place. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll go there and be fine. But yeah, just think about like if you're interviewing with a company, ask them like what kind of projects do interns work on? What is like the company culture like? I mean, company culture might be a broad question, but like if you're interviewing with the team you're going to be placed on, that is really nice because you can kind of suss out someone you might potentially be working with, and you can talk about like what is like the planning cycle, or like how do you decide who gets to work on what, things like that. I think I've realized are really key. Let me see. Yeah, probably those things. Yeah, and just like how much also you want to keep in mind, like depending on like the climate, I guess at the point when you're applying, like if you're going to be remote, those things are really important to take into account, like culturally, I think a lot of teams are bad at being remote and like don't communicate as much as it would be if it was like in person. So ask questions about like remote transition, how they plan to onboard you, stuff like that. If they have a plan for you, that's good.
Yeah, I think it's like obviously seconding the culture thing, but that's kind of been reiterated many times. I would say like another great thing to keep in mind as you're asking is like, does it seem like they know what they want to do with you? Like oftentimes companies or HR departments will like hire co-ops with no specific plan on where they're supposed to go, who's supposed to be dealing with them. You want to like, a great way to figure out like how it's going to be is like talking to previous co-ops. The co-op advisors at Northeastern are a great resource. Like they have tons and tons of alumni, et cetera, students that they know who've gone to specific companies, and they're way more likely to give you an honest view of what it was like. But yeah, like you want to make sure that like they know what kind of work they're going to be giving you. They know that you're going to be getting that you're going to be getting a steady stream of work to be working on. And then you can even ask like, what are ways that I could expand upon like my set role? Like, are there things that I could do? Like one really cool thing about my first co-op is like, I did interviews there while I was there too. And like, that's something that is, might not be like mentioned in the job description, but it's like, you want to be able to expand your skills. So that's definitely important to ask about.
Okay. I agree with everything that's said before. I think those are all really important points. Also to add, I think particularly for me, I really care about a startup environment, not like the side of the startup that's tends to be stereotypically overworked, but more so the tight-knit community, the knowing your coworkers pretty well and having a fast-paced product. I think that's something that really speaks to me in particular. And I'm also really interested in what the company does as a whole. What's their mission? What are they trying to achieve? And would you see them being relatively successful in like 5 years? I think these are more nitpicky points, but they're things that I really care about in a company and essentially somewhere I want to work for. And I think my last point would probably be their tech stack. I think also might be a little bit nitpicky, but if they have kind of a legacy tech stack or something you might not be interested in working on, I don't think you should probably look at that place for you in particular. So making sure you like what they're working on and potentially like what technology they're using.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Our next question is, how do you prepare for interviews, whether they're technical or behavioral?
For behavioral interviews, I tend to look at the job description and see if there's anything mentioned there that like is clearly a soft skill that they want from you. And then another thing I try to do is like write down, like a story I can tell about myself that I know I can tell pretty well and like mold it towards one of those things to try to sell myself. And also, if it's on Zoom, one thing that I've found really helpful, and it's very uncomfortable, is like recording myself on photo booth to see what I look like and to try to like point out weird mannerisms or saying a lot, something like that, which I think could really help with both types of interviews, just generally remote ones. And then for technical, if you can figure out what it's going to be about, sometimes they'll tell you specifically like it's going to be about system design or like a simple algorithm. There are a lot of resources for practicing. I kind of like YouTube videos because I can get it explained to me so that if I ever need to explain it to someone else, it's easy. Those are my things.
To prepare for behavioral portion of the interviews, I also like to look at the description for the job, and I like to kind of think beforehand of some of the questions that I've been asked before. So a lot of times I'm asked about like a challenging problem I experienced on a school project or co-op, a time that you had a conflict, my strengths, my weaknesses, and I try to think of how I can relate those and how I can like tell the story in a concise way. And then for the technical interviews, I like to reflect a lot upon like the previous co-op searches that I've had. And so between my first and second search, I think most of winter break, I tried going through the cracking the coding interview book, and just doing like a lot of like leak code questions. As Rachel said, a lot of companies or some companies will tell you beforehand what kind of questions to expect. And if they do say that, I try to freshen up on those. Or if they have like a language specific type of question. But leak code is really great. And so I like to practice on that as well.
Yeah, I'd say similarly, I tend to like, I feel like I usually have behavioral interviews. They're either like pretty short recently, or like it's usually just like, tell me about a technical project you've worked on. I get that like every single time now, or just talk about your other internships. So I take notes on like one technical project that I can talk about in depth. Like I have one note of this one project I can talk about, and then just like skim my resume really fast to make sure I remember what I did. And then technical, yeah, probably just like one leak code problem or something, just to remind myself. Usually it's mostly about syntax, because like I don't always code in like the thing I feel most comfortable about, like for coding interviews. And like you don't want to like go into your technical interview and be like, I forget how to like split the string in this language I told you I was most proficient in or whatever. But I mean, usually they're chill, like you can just Google it. But like you don't want to like pause too much, also burns your time. So yeah, just brush up on whatever syntax and stuff if you can think through it, the problem. Or usually I don't give myself enough time to actually prepare actual like technical thought processes, just brush up on the syntax.
Yeah, I would obviously echoing what everyone else says, but another great thing is like remembering and practicing, like explaining how you did something. I think my first time around, I was always in a rush to like start writing a for loop for no reason at all. I was just, let's write this for loop and see where it goes, you know? But like a great thing is to explain out loud, like the entire process of your thinking to the person. And oftentimes they'll point out to you like, oh, did you think about this edge case? Or that sounds great, like, why don't we move forward? So then you have a great sense of like whether or not you're headed in the right direction. Because like the worst case is they don't say anything, you just start coding, and then 25 minutes in, you realize the way you structured everything in is like fundamentally does not work with the specific edge case that you have. Like that's the worst, and it hurts every time. This is like maybe a little bit controversial, but you can obviously like schedule your interviews in a specific order depending on how important you think certain, or like how important they are to you. I feel like I always have a ramp up period when I'm doing coding interviews, and the first couple always don't go so hot. And then, you know, as I get into my groove, you know, it becomes much better and I become stronger, I become more eloquent, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I agree with everything again. I would also agree with what Jean just said. I think after, like, yeah, just last semester, I definitely had several interviews that didn't go so hot, and then it just got better from there. So sometimes you have to take L's before you win, right? But I think also I remember before my Datadog interview, particularly because that was like the co-op I was really set on. I asked my roommates to practice interview with me, and I think that really helped, because I think once you get yourself in the mindset of this is like a real interview, and then really talk your way through, and don't be afraid to like over explain, because you can never really over explain, I feel. And yeah, just making sure you can run through interviews, practice whatever concepts you're kind of weak on, and just try it out with a friend, see how it goes. I think that really gets you into a good like interview mindset.
Awesome, definitely makes sense. This next question is kind of a two-part question. So the first one is, what advice do you all have for CS students who are applying for co-ops now? And the second question is, how did you balance the co-op search with class?
I think I don't have much advice beyond what we've already been saying. I think definitely a big one that I'll just say again is to go with your gut. You know yourself, you know how you work, all of that. As far as balancing it, I tended to kind of go through the listings when I had free time. So like in between classes, if you show up somewhere early, if you want to procrastinate something else, and you can just like hit apply on certain ones or like save ones for later that you want to put more time and effort into. I also personally am interested in both like software specific roles and then also like medical tech companies. And so I have two different resumes that kind of like play to my skills in different areas. And that way I can just submit one or the other depending on which co-op I have, which I found really helpful.
I guess for advice for this specific search or for searching like during COVID times, I know someone mentioned it, but make sure you ask about how their company is dealing with remote work. I've asked companies before, and it's very clear if companies do not have great communication, and I think that that might be quite telling for a company. In addition, I think everyone knows everything's really uncertain, but it's important to ask if they foresee themselves going into the office like as soon as possible, if they're going to like wean into it. Things like that probably will play into effect during your co-op. And then for balancing the co-op search with class, I actually found it to be a lot easier to balance it now that most of school is remote or hybrid. It was definitely a lot tougher having to calculate in commuting to an actual office. But I would say make sure you tell your roommates, or if you're living with other people, to be very quiet while you're doing your interview, or try to schedule your interview while people are in classes so that you can be as relaxed as you can be. Also, if you like, you can see like my bed's behind me, like make sure your room like looks nice behind you. And sorry, that was for advice, but for balancing co-op search, definitely like look at just this applying in your free time, and try not to book too many things in one day. I feel like that ends up being overwhelming and then may negatively impact how you do an interview.
Yeah, once again, completely with Rachel and Izzy. Advice. I didn't think, yeah, advice, just like don't get too down on yourself. Just like you can do it. I swear. Like I literally had zero experience. And somehow I'll pull through. I like 1 year of experience. But you can like twist that. Like I told one of my interviewers that, and he was like impressed. He was like, "Oh, you've only been doing that for a year. Like that's pretty cool." So it's like, I don't know, you'll figure it out. And if you are having issues, I think the Slack is awesome. New at Slack, just overall great community, like to hit up all the time. Like literally just if you want validation for your feelings, I feel like you should just hit the Slack. Like I feel like people will be there for you. Just be like, just took an L. Also like I tend to like spam apply things after I fail or after I take an L, It's like, oh damn, that was rough. Let me open Newerx and see what's up, if there's anything else to give myself hope. Yeah, I think it's all about your mental state. So just like keep calm and carry on, as they say.
Yeah, I think definitely for first time, it's like really important to kind of put yourself out there and search broadly. I kind of am in the mindset that like you're not really in a place to like reject offers until you have an offer. Like don't look at a posting, say like that's not exactly what I want to do, so therefore I'm just like not going to even apply, because you're like kind of shooting yourself down before you even try. sometimes the HR department is just like bad at writing like job descriptions, and you'll find out as part of the interview process that it's like much more well aligned with what you want to do. Or if you tell them what you want to do, they'll like actually realign the position for you, which is really nice. And then like balancing the co-op search with class, I think honestly, it's like about being really careful about when you schedule them and giving yourself time to prep. I think sometimes it's easy to like just like want to forget about it because it is kind of like this arduous process, but like to really dedicate time to it as if it's like a class rather than like as if it's just like kind of this thing that you can push off is really important. But it is hard. Like I don't think I ever like was as stressed as when I had my first co-op search. The subsequent searches are always better. I guarantee it. So yeah.
Yeah, I was also going to say, I think the hardest search is the first search, just because you have no clue what's going on. And honestly, I think I got into the rhythm of like, okay, this is how co-op search works after maybe 5 interviews of like big L's. So really, I think you shouldn't be afraid to apply to a lot of places, and really, yeah, like be open to anything, kind of like have a really broad, wide range of expectations. And then as you see what works for you, what is kind of like attracted to you or what you're attracted to, then you can kind of like narrow it down from there. But I'd also say try not to burn out. I think that's also a real scare. And personally, I think what really helped me is searching really early. So I think first search, I think you have to be verified by your advisor, I think, but definitely try to do that as soon as possible, because New Works is, well, there's not a ton of jobs out there, I feel. But if you're not just looking at New Works, I would definitely recommend LinkedIn or other job sites, just because you want to get your name out there as much as possible. And yeah, try to interview and schedule them not too far apart so you don't kind of burn out. And hopefully you'll be able to have a co-op before your school really ramps up. So yeah.
Awesome, thanks guys. So that was actually a great segue into our next question, which is, what can freshmen do to prepare for that co-op search?
I feel like that kind of depends on your personal like availability, what your schedule looks like. If you have like a job, again, like a job looks great on a resume no matter what it is, but if you also don't have the time for it, I wouldn't sweat it. I didn't have personally, I didn't have any personal projects, but what I did do was go back to like one of my fundies projects and just like make it look a lot prettier, make it function a lot better. And I threw it on GitHub. I had like a data science project that was just like super basic natural language processing. I cleaned that up and put it on GitHub. And just was like prepared to talk about them, knowing full well that they weren't like the most spectacular thing. But I think, Northeastern does try to build projects into our coursework, and you can take advantage of that. I think especially if you're not going to be able to do a personal project, right after you're done with the project is a really good time to clean it up if you can, so that in the future, when you're looking for something to put up there for people to look at, it will have already been cleaned up while the mechanics of all of it is still on your mind.
I was actually not even in computer science. Like my major was in engineering when I was a freshman, but I think if you're a freshman and you don't have a ton of coding experience, which is like where I was, I think choosing like a very simple project and putting that on GitHub, or as Rachel said, like the Fundies projects on GitHub, I think my first like solo project was just making a very simple HTML website and having my resume on there. And then as I like got better at coding, I made it like a React website. And so I think that those are really good ways to showcase your own work, and companies do look at them. I've had multiple interviews where they ask me about my website and like what I like, how I made it. And then, yeah, so I definitely recommend like doing a side project if you have time. And if you do it something that you're interested in, then you might be more motivated to do it. But definitely make a GitHub. I think the GitHub and even the HTML website will benefit you at least a little bit.
I will say that I didn't have a GitHub or any of that, and it ended up okay, but those would definitely help you, like for sure. But like if you find yourself stressed, like don't like to worry too much, but yeah, definitely know how to describe your projects, even if they're just school projects. Mine were just school projects on my resume, even if you don't have them up on GitHub. Some of them you might have to like verify with your professor if you can, depending on what they are, or you might have to make it private. Just a note. Also, like I would say sign up for a TA position if you can. That's definitely like a point for you. If it's like technical, that's even better. But like there's some like supporting classes, not like the main fundies ones, that always need TAs. And if you can get on that, that'll help. I was like, I didn't even get a fundies position. I remember I applied for a fundies one. Like, yeah, just sign up for stuff like you get emails about it. It's like, oh, will this help me? Maybe. Let me just click apply. But I applied for fundies one. And then they were like, I did the interview with like Rebecca Becker, what's her face? For the fundies one person. Yeah. Did the interview with her, and then she was like, oh, like, nah, but like we're thinking about making a lab grader a position. So all I did for the entire semester, like for half an hour, like a 1 hour max every week, I would grade lab quizzes for my first semester sophomore year. So the easiest thing, but literally just put it on my resume, and I was like, I graded lab quizzes. And that was actually, I found out later that counted as a point on my resume. Like some people like will grade your resume, and people were like, I didn't recognize the position, but it seemed like leadership or something. So they gave me like a point for it, like at my next co-op that I got. So maybe I wouldn't have gotten my interview if I didn't do that. You never know. Just like take opportunities if you have time for them. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, definitely shout out the New Wit website hack day, because the only thing on my GitHub was the New Wit website with like one image, a link to my LinkedIn. It was janky, but it was live, so points for that. I think I definitely second the like take advantage of any position you can, because like I came into my first co-op search also like I just had a TA position, but whenever they ask you questions about like times you struggled and about like working with, like within difficult situations, like having something like vaguely technical that you can talk about is like something that is definitely like they can connect to better than like, yeah, like, I fought with my brother or some, like some nonsense that like, or, a position that just like, they're like, yeah, that's great, but it's not super technical to talk about. I think there's like a lot of great opportunities out there. And if you can handle it, I definitely recommend combing through the emails that Corey sends out. I know they send out like a massive number of them, and it's so easy to like just delete them. But sometimes you find real gems when you look at them. There's like workshops and stuff that people are hosting. I know alum have come back and hosted workshops too. And sometimes you can get like a small project out of it. And you can throw it up on your GitHub and you're like, yep, that's a fully fledged project. There it is.
Okay. I also didn't have that much on my resume, I think, when I first applied. But I did get really into like a hackathon craze. I think the semester I was applying to co-ops. So I think I was able to use some of that and list them as projects, and they really carried me in my interviews. So if you're interested in hackathons, highly recommend. I would also say, kind of forgetting now. Oh, okay. So if you have any other interests, you might also want to put that on your resume. I know for me personally, I really like e-commerce. So I put something on my resume that I've done for e-commerce, just like selling stuff. And I'm not sure if it's why I got the interview, but my first co-op at Whoop said that they were really interested in my e-commerce interest, and it aligned with their company, and their team that they were hiring for was looking for someone who was really interested in e-commerce. So no idea, but that was definitely a talking point. So whatever you might be interested in could help you. So put it on your resume.
Great. Well, I think we're almost out of time, but I do have one. I've been manning the chat, and I do have one question. So what is something you enjoyed about your co-op experience? So I guess like a favorite moment or something like that.
I don't have one off the top of my head if someone else wants to take this first.
Yeah, I can go first. At my co-op, in my case, we did a virtual hackathon, and it was for like 2 or 3 days. I partnered up with 3 other people on my team, and we were just, it was like no actual work. It was just this hackathon. They had a bunch of virtual events. Um, the company like even sent us like a little package. And we like ended up, my team ended up making like a little Slack bot with Spotify API involved. But it was really fun just to like get to know my coworkers outside of like actual work, even though it was remote. And there was like a bunch of like trivia and like online games and stuff like that. So that was really fun.
My favorite part of co-op is usually like once I feel like I know what's going on, like the onboarding stuff can be hell, honestly, but it's like once you figure out what's going on and you feel like you're really doing something for the team or the company, I think that's really fulfilling. And like once you feel comfortable with your team, maybe like and friendly, I think that's like a nice moment. You're like, well, like I know what's going on, which is cool.
Yeah, I think definitely one great thing is like if they have any events going on to take advantage of them. I know a lot of companies have like co-op specific events, and I know when it's online, it can be kind of like a pain because it's just like more Zooms, but and for what, you know? But it's honestly like so important to the culture. Like not only is like connecting with your manager, but like connecting to others, people your age there is like so valuable, and it feels way more rewarding. And like maybe you can ask like the other co-ops, you know, your dumb questions that you're like not sure if you should ask your manager for the third time or something. It's like it can really feel way more friendly just knowing that there are other co-ops there and like connecting to them. So that's always been super like a great time for me on co-ops.
Yeah, Jean and I were good co-op friends.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, like for sure. I think knowing other co-ops or knowing other coworkers makes it so much more fun. So that's always been really nice. And I think definitely when we were in person for Whoop, we had a lot of team outings and just a lot of great social activities. And I still talk to some of them today. So that's really awesome. I think one of my favorite memories, probably because it was in person, I think at Whoop, I distinctly remember we would have like all hands, but in the kitchen of maybe like 250 people. And I remember we had like a recent launch for our, like on our app, we had an update that I helped, I guess, deploy. And the feeling of having the CEO shout your team and I guess just complimenting you guys on what you guys have achieved is pretty great. So I think that's something I'll really remember because Will Ahmed, the CEO of Whoop, is one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. So he's really cool. But yeah, I guess that's just like one of the memories that comes to mind for sure.
I think for me, my like cutest, sweetest little memory was I was entirely remote and I was terrified because I didn't think I was going to meet anybody. And I definitely barely interacted with any other co-ops because we were all distributed across teams. So I ended up becoming like best friends with my little team of like people who were 10, 20 years older than me. And after my time ended, I got something in the mail from my manager that was just like this really cute, like holiday themed card with a horse on it, because he remembered that I like used to ride horses, and it was like, "We miss you, Rachel, Happy New Year." And it was just so cute. And I think just definitely bonding with these random adults that you may never see again is kind of fun.
All right, I think that's everyone, right? Lindsay, you went, right? I'm sorry,
Yep, I went. Yeah.
it's late. I'm tired.
Yeah, no worries.
But thank you guys so much for coming. That was actually really interesting. And like, I've been on co-ops. It's my second co-op, and I still feel like I learned stuff. So yeah, it was really great. I hope everyone else that you guys got to get something from this as well. Feel free to DM all of these folks in the community Slack. You can probably email them. I don't know, they should probably say for themselves whether you can email them or not. But yeah, it was great. And you're dismissed. Feel free to do what you want with your evening.